Welcome to Maddie's Monthly Foster Connection, a monthly webcast where we learn about topics of interest to those of us who are interested in starting or expanding foster programs. We'll be hearing from two different foster to adopt programs today. We'll save questions for the end after our second presentation. Our first speaker today is Lauren Nickerson, Executive Director of Hawaii Island Humane Society. Welcome, Lauren.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I am excited to share two of my favorite programs here at Hawaii Island Humane Society, which is our Foster to Adopt program. And then Kelly did ask me to share a little bit about our Field Trips for Shelter Dogs program. These are two great programs that really help us manage our adult animal population with particular emphasis on our adult dogs. So Hawaii Island Humane Society is located on the island of Hawaii, also known as the Big Island. We were established in 1965. Since 2020, we have been operating as two limited admission shelters. Prior to 2020, we did have a history as our county's animal control agency, and we did function as open intake. So our foster to adopt program and field trip programs were both developed as an open intake shelter, and we've carried them over as we changed our model. We do take in an annual intake of about 1,200 animals per year. We focus on dogs, cats, guinea pigs, and rabbits. We have an average life-saving rate of about 98%. Our Foster to Adopt program was really born out of innovation. So when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in March of 2020, we realized that we would have to, like all shelters, close our doors to the public. And immediately that night, I didn't sleep all night, and I had a panic of how are we going to get the animals out? And so we literally launched our Foster to Adopt program overnight and as a means to get our animals out the door and into homes. At that time in March of 2020, we made every single animal eligible for Foster to Adopt. So kittens and puppies were included in this. As a pilot, it started as a 2-week period, and all adoptions had to be finalized in person. So we had some of these interesting details that we have since learned from, and what I'm going to present to you today is a way to learn from our mistakes and learn how we improved upon the program to make it what it is today. At that time in 2020, we were using the technology of Acuity Scheduler, Google Forms, and Google Sheets. And then our database that we had at the time, I've never met a shelter that was using that same database. It was called Rescue Connection or Shelter Connect, or our staff called it AC Plus. It was really a dinosaur. And so the data that I'm going to present to you today does not include the initial period of the program from March to September of 2020, because we didn't have a database that could support accurate reporting. As the program proved to be successful, we were seeing animals go out the door. We decided to stick with the program. From October to December of 2020, we placed 182 animals in Foster to Adopt. So that is just that last quarter of the year when we had switched to Shelter Love as our database. Of that, 152 animals were adopted straight from Foster to Adopt without ever returning to the shelter. And we saw a conversion rate of 83.5%. Program was such a success that we decided that even after we could open our doors to the public, we are open to the public. We've been open since August of 2021. We opened our doors back up at both shelters. We decided to continue the program. So you can see our data here. The changes that we have made to the program since then is that it is reserved for adult animals ages 6 months and older is really who the target population is. We will have behavior cases that are potentially under socialized puppies that are potentially 4 to 5 months old. We will make exceptions and allow them to be eligible on a case-by-case basis for Foster to Adopt. We do make sure that all of our animals are spayed and neutered and microchipped prior to going. The period for Foster to Adopt is now a 3-week period instead of a 2-week period. So we extended it by 1 week to align to our recommendations related to decompression. So we wanted to make sure those timelines were synced up for just clear communication about what the intent of the program is. We now use Shelter Love, which has made it a lot easier to reduce the barrier of finalizing the adoption. So we use their mobile checkouts. People don't have to come back into the shelter with the pet once they've brought them home for Foster to Adopt. They can go ahead and just finalize their adoption via text message. So the process for our Foster to Adopt program is that we use an online application through Shelter Love. We also allow applicants to fill out a paper application in Shelter if technology is a barrier. We don't want that to be a barrier. So they first start with their intent to adopt. So this program is different than our traditional foster program in that it starts with the intent to adopt, and it is a complementary program to our adoption program. All of the data that I have shared does not include pets that were adopted by their fosters. These are all pets that went into the foster to adopt pipeline from the onset. So once they apply, our adoptions team will then contact the applicant. We schedule a meet and greet appointment, and the appointment is confirmed using Acuity. This is all the same pipeline as our adoption program. At that point, once the applicant comes in for their meet and greet and they meet with the pets, if it's a match, they are given the option to either do an on-the-spot adoption or participate in our foster to adopt program. So we allow that option for every single pet that is 6 months or older. And we really detail that at the time of the meet and greet in person so people can weigh out their options. We do not require participation in the program. If people want to adopt right then and there, of course, we love that. We do recommend the program, however, for some of our more behaviorally challenging cases, potentially some of our medical cases. We also look at what the profile of the home is. And so if they have children in the home or multiple pets, or perhaps they are looking for a dog that can be safe with cats, but we don't have a known history on the dog, we do recommend this program as a supportive way to get the pet out the door and into the home. During that 3-week period, we provide both medical care and behavioral support. We pretty much treat them as if they are still a Humane Society pet, but we are still investing in their care. We're still caring for them. That type of investment, that type of resource support has really made it appealing for people to participate in this program. And I'll go into the benefits of that later. If it's not a match, so the pet goes out in the home, they're out in our foster to adopt program, they have those 3 weeks to make their decision. At any point during the 3 weeks, if it's not a match, the options are they can return the pet to the shelter, or they can convert to traditional fostering. And so the pet remains in the home. We don't have to take up a kennel, and we are still gathering information about the pet. The pet then becomes available for adoption by another party. If it is a match, the adoption can be finalized at any time during the 3-week period. I send out a lot of dogs through foster to adopt, and often we'll see people finalizing within a day or two. They just want that bit of time to think it over and make sure it's a fit. Other people will take the full 3 weeks. If at the end of the 3 weeks, they are still not clear on their decision, perhaps there have been some behavioral challenges or medical needs that have popped up during those 3 weeks, we will grant an extension on a case-by-case basis. The number one thing our staff will ask if somebody's asking for an extension on the 3 weeks is if the intent to adopt is still there. So if they are still thinking they're going to adopt this dog, they think this dog is a fit for them, but maybe in the last few days, the dog started coughing and they're concerned about that. Or in the last few days, the dog met somebody new in the family and was reactive to it, and they just want a little bit more support. We will provide that with the understanding that the intent is to adopt that dog. Because when they are in foster to adopt, they are not featured on our website. They're not available for adoption by anyone else. So we do want to make sure that the pet has every opportunity to either stay in that home or be available for a home for somebody else. Our adoption contract is signed digitally through Shelter Love. Again, if somebody has technology barriers to using a cell phone or using the internet, we will just bring them back into the shelter to finalize everything. We also loan out gear to our foster to adopt program. So we loan out a collar, a harness, a leash, and an ID tag with our information on it. The adopter has the option to either return the borrowed gear, which they sign an agreement to that, or they also have the option to purchase it, which we have found a lot of adopters really like that convenience. They already have the pet in the home. They already are wearing a harness that fits them properly. They're happy to donate to the shelter to keep that gear. So one big thing, and it's a little blurry, but it is in the file box that Kelly created. I gave all of our files for our foster to adopt program, but a big part of communication that we have sent out that is key to clear communication between our team and the foster to adopt participant is our foster to adopt reminders. So this is a half sheet size. I tell everybody that goes out the door, please put this on your fridge. It has the direct contact for our adoptions team and our veterinary teams. We really want to support them in every way. We don't want to make communicating with us challenging. We have a bit of a complicated phone tree that can be a little hard to navigate. So we do want to make sure our foster to adopt participants have the direct way to get in touch with us. So they have the option of calling, texting, or emailing for any of their needs. So this goes out with every animal that leaves the shelter. So lots of benefits to this program, and we've spent a lot of time figuring out if this program should endure with us, and it was always a resounding yes, and that's because of all of the different benefits. So for the adopter, they get the time and support and resources to make an informed decision. And what we have found is that gives them the psychological safety to take a risk. We get some people that really aren't sure if they're ready to adopt, but they want to give it a try. It also lowers the risk in terms of bringing home maybe a long stay dog or a dog with behavior concerns or a dog with medical needs. It gives them that time to really ease into that bond and that relationship with that pet. Here in Hawaii, we have a very strong culture surrounding the word shame. And so we were finding that before we had this option, people would feel ashamed to return an adopted pet. And there was a lot of negative emotions around that. Through Foster to Adopt, we let them know it's okay. It's okay if it's not a match. We can help you find another animal. You can continue fostering it. And we've found that really has helped our community want to take more risks in participating in this program. For the pet, they just know they're leaving the shelter. So they're getting out of the shelter. They're getting a shelter break. They're getting that time to decompress. But it has also created more opportunities for our harder to place animals. So we as an organization specialize in intaking deaf and blind dogs. That is a passion of mine. My dog was born blind and deaf. And as a result, we end up having a lot of dogs with sensory differences in our care. We currently have 6 deaf and blind dogs at Hawaii Island Humane Society. And this, for a lot of people, they've never experienced bringing home a pet with special needs. And so for that pet, that creates that opportunity for them to get in a home without that pressure of making an automatic adoption decision. It also helps us with our bonded pairs that we know are all hard to place, and any animals that have medical or behavioral contingencies or concerns. And lastly, for our organization, it really helps us manage our capacity. Just like with an adoption appointment, we know the animal will hopefully be leaving from that appointment, but we have more confidence in knowing that if they're not ready to adopt right then and there, they still might be ready to take a pet home that day through our Foster to Adopt program. It also allows us the opportunity to stay connected with that pet through that period of time, so that we can educate and advocate for them. It might have been a failed adoption otherwise if it was just an adoption for some of our behavioral needs, but instead we can stay connected and really hold the hand of that adopter and help them give that pet the time they need. And it helps us get harder to place animals out the door. And then lastly, if it's not a match, if the pet doesn't get adopted through that home, we have the opportunity, just like any foster program, to learn more about the pet. And so it's a win-win-win for adopter, pet, and shelter. The entire impact of the program is that since October of 2020, we have placed over 1,100 pets in Foster to Adopt. 900 of them were directly adopted through Foster to Adopt, which was an 81% conversion rate. And that does not include pets that were ultimately adopted by their fosters, which I know some of us call that a foster fail. I always call it a foster win, because that is a win for that animal and that win for that person that they found their correct match. So that rate would be higher if we included our pets adopted by their fosters. I'm going to transition into our Field Trips for Shelter Dogs program. If anyone has any questions about our Foster to Adopt program, I included all of our materials. I'm happy to talk you through a more detailed nuance of the process. We find it really easy. And I do want to point out, we are a very small team. We have 26 full-time employees running 2 shelters that are 2 hours apart. I myself commute between our 2 shelter locations regularly. So we are stretched really thin, and we have found that this program and our field trips program are still an easy lift, even for a small organization with limited resources. So we have 3 full-time staff on our adoptions team across both shelters. I will jump in here and there, which I just do because I find joy in it. So I will kind of volunteer for my own organization on my day off just to get animals out the door if we have a lot of adoption interest on a weekend. So we've made it so that it is an easy lift even for the smallest of teams. Our Field Trips for Shelter Dogs program is one of our favorites. It's one of those programs that you see become very popular online and on social media because we can really sell the fact that you can come on vacation to Hawaii and take a dog out for the day. And we've really shaped the program around encouraging visitors to make that part of their vacation, but also encouraging residents to participate regularly as well. So our dogs that are eligible for our foster to adopt program, it's typically a very high percentage of our dogs in shelter. Again, they are adult dogs ages 6 months and older. Again, if we have a fully vaccinated puppy that's 5 months, they will get thrown on the field trips list too. So we don't create a barrier there. They must be spayed and neutered, and they have to be 10 days post-op prior to going on a field trip, because we do have a lot of people that will take the dogs swimming, and we just want to make sure they are medically cleared to be fully active no matter what their day brings. We do prioritize placing our dog social or dog friendly dogs out in field trips, but we don't limit our reactive dogs from going. We just want to make sure the handler is properly experienced and prepared to help them with those needs as they arise. Typically, our dog social and dog friendly dogs are easier for your average visitor to come in and take them out. As part of our program, we encourage them not to allow on-leash meet and greets with strange dogs out in the wild, because we do want to make sure that the purpose of the program is that the dog is able to relax and have fun, and we are not proponents of on-leash meet and greets with strange dogs. We also want to make sure that dog is comfortable and relaxed with meeting new people, from the field trippers to people that they're going to meet out while on their trip. They are, going in a car with brand new people. People will walk up to them to say hi on their field trip. So we do want to make sure that's a really positive experience for that dog, and that is something that they are enjoying. So our field trips program is pretty easy to participate in. We have our Acuity scheduler link is right on our website, so people can go online, they can schedule their own field trip. Participating children that participate, they have to be 8 years or older with their adults. So we used to not have an age limit, but we were finding that no matter how much we told people not to hand the leash to their child, they were handing off the leash to a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old. And that was obviously a safety hazard. So we do go through that in our safety briefing, but we have capped it where they have to be 8 years or older to participate. We send them out with our field trip backpack that says this dog is available for adoption. They go out with a harness, a leash, a collar, and Adopt Me bandana, and we give them a guide to any of our dog-friendly local spots in the area that they can go to. And then prior to leaving with the dog, they go through a very quick safety briefing. It's about 10 to 15 minutes, and then they sign off on the agreement to take the dog out for the day. Like I said, our program is open to visitors and residents. We charge a $25 donation for visitors. And for residents, we charge a one-time $10 donation, and that's only one time, and then they get registered in our system, and then there's no donation going forward. We really encourage routine field trips. We call them our loyal field trippers, and we actually open up special scheduling spots for them too. So it's a great way for people that aren't ready to foster. Maybe they don't have the time commitment to volunteer, but they want to pop in and take a dog for a car ride to go get a pup cup at Starbucks. Or we have a local real estate agent who's been picking up dogs and taking them to all of her listings, and then listing the dog and the house together, which has been really cute. So that gives her that flexibility to pop in and grab a dog for the day. She's not ready to adopt right now. So it gives a lot of opportunity for people that either can't have dogs or are not ready to adopt. And we really enjoy that part of the program. Lastly, of course, we know that there are huge benefits for our dogs going out on field trips. So we, as an organization, we get to learn more about the dog, how they did in the car, how they did meeting new people. Did they see a cat? Did they try to pull the field tripper's arm off to run into the bushes after the cat, or were they comfortable and happy seeing the cat? Did they enjoy going in the water? And so we get a lot of feedback. We have toyed with different ways to capture that feedback. We did a field trip report card. We've done a survey. We were finding that it was not capturing the type of information that we really enjoyed. So instead, we've encouraged very open-ended storytelling. So they are welcome to email us with their day of how they did, along with any photos and videos and content that they got. When they give us that story, I'm able to then pull out quotes for our social media, which has been really helpful. Of course, for the dog, they get a shelter break, which includes enrichment, exercise, and relaxation. We get a lot of very tired dogs that come back to the shelter at the end of the day. This sleepy dog here in the photo is Casper. Casper was blind and deaf. He went out on a field trip with some of our loyal field trippers. He was pretty stressed in the shelter, and it was really exciting to see him being able to just relax out in the world, out on a beach. He was snoozing the whole day. Of course, we do get a lot of marketing content through our field trip program. And then we do get adoptions. So what we find is we get adoptions from two ways through our field trips program. Either the field trippers themselves are interested in adopting the pet, and that includes visitors to our island. So we do have an off-island adoption program. We will help facilitate an adoption to the mainland. This has become increasingly popular. We have a dog leaving us today to go to Alaska, and they met her during their field trip when they came to visit and took her out on vacation. We also do get adoptions through people that meet the dog while out on a field trip. And every backpack that goes out has a little info sheet about the dog, so that if they do meet people out that are interested in the dog, they can hand them a piece of paper that has the dog's name, and it has our QR code to our organization. And then lastly, the dogs serve as great ambassadors, as I call them, out in the world. We get a lot of feedback of, oh, I can't believe this is a shelter dog. We ourselves as an organization have been dealing with a little bit of a miscommunication about our identity in the past few years. So when we stopped providing animal control services, there was a lot of feeling in the community that we had closed or we didn't exist anymore. And our field trip dogs really get out in the world, and people are excited to learn that they're from Hawaii Island Humane Society. So it does give great exposure for the organization. So I will let you put any questions in the chat. I love this photo. This is Rocky. He has since been adopted. This was him on his way out to a foster to adopt program. Rocky was a 90-pound senior pit bull who was one of our longest stay dogs. And this is him and his new mom on the day they left for foster to adopt. And then she adopted him a week later. And if anyone has any questions beyond the Q&A or beyond the forum, you can always reach out to me. Email is the best way to get me. But thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Next, we'll hear from Katie Hutchinson, Outcomes Manager for Pima Animal Care Center, about their pre-adoption program. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I'm going to talk about Pima Animal Care Center's pre-adoption program. This program differs a little bit from the traditional foster to adopt program, because it's really focused on decreasing length of stay in the shelter by placing pets that might have minor medical needs or are just waiting on an altar before adoption out into the community as soon as possible. So just to give you a little bit of a synopsis, so I love fostering. I started off in animal welfare actually as a foster back in 2011, and just kind of fell head over heels in kind of the great work that foster does. I wound up kind of finding my niche in ringworm fosters, and so have really kind of loved the more complicated cases and some things that really help get really needy animals out of the shelter. I had an opportunity to become the adoptions coordinator for PAC, and I've since moved into the animal placement manager. And that transition has been really beneficial in looking at our procedures and looking to reduce kind of organizational silos. And that's really helped us kind of create different pathways out into foster from adoption or adoption from foster, and just being able to give that customer service aspect of whatever the customer feels like they want to call it, we'll send it out. PAC has also received our fair share of crises over the last couple years, and it's really kind of hammered in for us that transparency and asking your community to step up to fulfill the needs of what your shelter is dealing with have been really key in our life saving. So for those of you who haven't heard of Pima Animal Care Center, we are located in Tucson, Arizona, and have been a government shelter for years and years. We have a yearly annual intake between 16 and 17,000 animals, and are the primary government support services for all of Pima County, which is Tucson, Arizona, as well as all of the surrounding area. In 2015, PAC received a bond from our community that allowed us to really build a new shelter, invest in new programs. And I was really excited to be invited to speak on a Maddie's call because in 2017, Maddie's fund actually came in and gave a grant to PAC to revamp our whole foster program. And this was kind of the origins of a lot of our innovative foster programming in particular, as well as kind of the foundation of our pre-adoption program we're going to talk today. So for our foster programs, we typically place between 6,000 and 7,000 animals into foster at some point during their journey through our shelter. And our live release fluctuates between 90 and 92% over the last few years. So currently at PAC, we have 3 different foster programs: a traditional foster, which focuses on adult dogs and cats; neonate and medical fosters, which are our younger puppies and kittens, as well as animals needing some minor medical. And then we also have safety net fostering, which provides temporary placement for people while they're in a crisis. But our pre-adoption program is kind of a unique beast. This program initially started off like the presentation we just heard, in a traditional kind of foster to adopt. We were having people take animals and try them out in their homes for a set time frame, and then decide whether they were going to keep fostering, adopt the animal, or schedule a return to swap them out. We were finding, though, that we also had a need for reducing our length of stay for animals that just had a few things going on, and we had people who were willing to take them. So that's where we had the pre-adoption program that came to the focus. So basically, the goal of this program was to expedite placement of pets out of the shelter. We were finding that we had animals that were remaining unavailable due to things like dentals or waiting on their altar. And we wanted to make sure that our goal was to make animals available for marketing for adoption as soon as possible. So with our pre-adopt program, we offer animals that have not been altered yet, as well as animals that have minor medical needs to be placed with adopters same day. And then we move the management of this program actually under the adoption team, since we wanted to coordinate all of our messaging and resources to be all the same ones that the adopters would get. So currently, we place around 10% of adopted animals initially into a pre-adoption program. And so this has been a really valuable way for us to reduce lengths of stay, but also to provide better medical care for a lot of these animals, and give pets a better chance of decompressing in a home. So at this point, we kind of have our 2 programs that we transitioned from foster to adopt. So just to rebrand, we found this was really helpful for both our staff as well as our community to really make a pre-adoption program and a trial adoption program. So for pets leaving for alter, this basically mostly comes into play over the weekends. We are not able to do surgeries on Saturdays and Sundays. And so for these animals, we want to get them home immediately. As you can see, it is much better for them to cuddle at home with their new family while they wait for their surgery than it is to take up kennel space, as well as be in the stressful kennels for 2 to 3 days, depending on when they were adopted. We will go and typically aim for 10 months and older for this program, just because we saw that that was kind of our cutoff in terms of having puppies go out, particularly unaltered, was something that for our risk assessment wasn't where we were feeling comfortable. So that's where we made that. But if there were sometimes neonates that were underweight or animals that had other medical issues, we can approve those to go out as well. This program also became something where we allowed people to opt in. Some people will want those day or 2 to prep for a new pet, and some people are really ready just to take a dog home same day. We had a little girl come to adopt a puppy for her birthday over the weekend, and it was something where we approved her to take it home same day because they were so excited to take it home. We've also found, just kind of as some side benefits, that we have seen a reduction in post-surgical complications in the shelter, since they are going and provided with a much more individualized care as well as kind of cleaner spaces and just less stressful environments to heal up in. So this has reduced our length of stay for these animals on average by 1 or 2 days at a minimum, and dependent on situations in shelter where we may not have enough spay neuter for the day, also could go up to 3 or 4 days. So that's a big chunk of our length of stay that we're kind of targeting there. Our secondary part of the pre-adoption program is for minor medical. So these are about 75% of our pre-adopted animals. These are ones that are waiting in the shelter for dentals or FHOs, for specialized surgeries, or for minor medical, like they might have a URI, they might need just some wound care. And so these ones in particular are really where it impacts our length of stay. These animals, if we were having to wait for them to get a dental or an alter when they were immunocompromised, could have several weeks in terms of when they would be staying in the shelter versus out into an adoption home. It also has improved our shelter safety. Like many shelters across the country, we've seen an increase in upper respiratory disease. One change that we've made is that our clinic team are now able also to just, if an animal's coming in and they're a little concerned and see some respiratory issues, we can easily transition them into this pre-adoption program so that they aren't going through all of our surgical equipment and potentially going and spreading that across the shelter. And then, of course, similar to the other things, they just heal up a lot better in a home. It's a lot safer for the animals as well. So the biggest benefit that we've found here at PAC is that pre-adoption allows the immediate availability as well as enhanced marketing for pets that we know have a lot of barriers for adoption. I love the story of Twister. Twister was a dog that came into PAC and had some neurological issues, had some things going on, and we didn't quite know what yet. We didn't know the main causes. This animal, instead of having to go and sit back in our ICU and have kind of vets looking at him, was immediately made available on our website. He did come with a lot of counseling and a lot of support, but he actually found a home with a veterinarian and a vet tech that were able to go and help us work through his case management so we could provide him that live outcome that might not have been possible if he wasn't able to go out of the shelter. I also really love pre-adoption because it basically is fostering light for a lot of our adopters. A lot of our adopters who come in might not know too much about fostering. And when we talk about pre-adoption, we have them go and sign a lot of the same agreements they would sign as fosters. And we also have an opt-in system to join our foster groups or our foster mailings so that they can kind of get integrated in that community as well. And then, of course, as you reduce length of stay, you also have your shelter saving costs. And then overall, especially as shelters are feeling the crunch with things like our census, in addition to just being able to provide better medical care, we also can save more lives from a space standpoint. So some highlights that if you're thinking about now, you're like looking at your programs and you're like, well, that might be kind of good. Here are some things to help you sell it. So one of our biggest pre-adoptions is actually kittens with ringworm. We have a high prevalence of ringworm every year, and we actually will go and make these animals available for adoption. They have a special place in our main cat adoption area called the Fungal Jungle. And we allow, especially since during kitten season, there might not be enough kittens for people to adopt. We allow people to come back and browse this area, and we have informational signs explaining ringworm, explaining the treatment process, and we can actually convert some adopters that came in for one happy, healthy kitten into a foster for a whole litter of ringworm kittens. So that really helps improve our overall welfare for these with improved treatment success. And it just helps get our community a little bit more aware of ringworm and a lot more willing to consider a ringworm foster. These were actually just from a few weeks ago. We had a couple people on a post about some of our ringworm kittens just going and saying, oh, this is easy. We've gotten our protocols, we've gotten it down. And it's something that could be a really beneficial thing to help boost some specialty fosters. Dental surgeries are probably our next big group of things we send out into pre-adoption for medical. One of the bonuses we've wound up finding for dentals is that a lot of times these dogs will go out and the doctors get their appointment. It's a couple months out before we can do a full dental. And they'll actually go and find a vet and do it under their own cost. Or we can find specialty centers that, if they have an opening in their schedule, are willing to work with us for a reduced rate to get some of these animals in faster than we would bringing them back into the shelter. Particularly for dentals, we find that the pre-treatment care they receive before a dental in pre-adoption has really impacted their overall welfare. They can gain some weight, they have improved pain management, and then the secondary infections, if they go home with a adopter straight from the shelter, is much reduced as well. And then I love this picture because we also just get a lot of people integrated into our PAC community through pre-adoption. So the girl in the blue shirt, her name is Michelle. She actually came to PAC at first to adopt an older animal who needed some medical care. She got through the medical care, and in that process got to know a lot of our staff. She got to know our foster program and built those relationships with our shelter. And now she actually not just fosters hospice and medical animals for us, but she also is one of our part-time staff now. And her big passion is really trying to match adopters with some of these pets that have some specialty needs and would really benefit from getting out of the homes quickly. We also see that these programs really help our community understand kind of how much shelters go above and beyond for certain animals. I know Lauren was talking about having a lot of blind dogs in her shelter. Having this program be front and center, be something you talk about on social media, something you offer across the board, really helps also some fundraising to make sure that you have funds available to be able to say yes to providing medical care for some of these needy animals. And then our bonus for our pre-adoption program, we've really kind of come to appreciate in the last couple of years, is that we have a built-in program to immediately respond to crisis needs in the shelter. So when we had a big disease outbreak in the shelter, we were able to send home the majority of our animals pre-adopt. We already had the programs, the processes, and the procedures to be able to immediately send those out same day without having to go and huddle and figure out new processes in the midst of a big crisis. It also helps leverage those community partnerships and that extra support that you've already built. And you have kind of that extra mailing group for a last ditch emergency push for fostering for some animals that really need out of the shelter. So we've talked a lot about, and I hope we've kind of sold you on why these programs can really impact your day-to-day. But how do you get started? It can be a little bit daunting. So start small. There is a lot that you can do to just try it out. Do a pilot, use a small program that you already feel fairly confident in, and use it to test out something a little bit bigger. Use your current practices and programs or your URI procedures or your ringworm procedures and figure out what it would take to bring those out into the community. And before you start, just make sure you're prepared. Sit down with your team and talk over what challenges you are. What are the barriers to implementing this? And get some protocols in your team already on the same page of what to do when you address them. A big thing before you start as well is really take a look at your paperwork. There was a question previously about what to do if somebody goes no contact during this process. Make sure you kind of talk those things out and build stuff into your paperwork that kind of addresses those. For us, one of the big things is what happens when we send an animal home to pre-adopt when they're just waiting on an altar and they go and have another big medical condition flare up. In our pre-adopt paperwork, we do go and have a lot of information about you're going out for a particular subset of something, whether it's altar or medical or URI or dental, and that anything outside of that, we're treating this as a normal adoption and would be falling under the purview of the adopter. So just make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. And as you come up with new challenges, see how you can work those in to kind of reduce your liability for those of you who, really need to make sure you're tightening up that liability issues, as well as make sure all of your organizational needs are being met. And then communication pathways. You can never communicate with enough time or to enough people. And these kind of programs pull in a variety of different aspects, from our adoptions team who are managing the back end, to our medical team who have to do checkups for these animals, We all really have to make sure we set how we are all communicating to do the best for the animals as they leave the shelter. And really take a look at your technology and leverage what you have available, whether it's Google Sheets or a big database like Chameleon or Shelter Love. There is lots you can do to have this an automated system that will help with automated communication, will help you with tracking and surveys, and get that data so that as you're starting this off, you can go back and say, this is really successful, or here's a little bit of a road bump that we need to address. And then some just challenges to consider from our experiences here. Some things you really want to look at before you get started with one of these programs. So one of the first ones is coordination of returns. Various programs look at this a little bit differently, whether you're going to have the return come through a foster program, an adoption program, sometimes the clinic, if it's going to be a medical animal. PAC offers this pretty much, and we consider it as a normal adoption. We really want all of these pre-adopters to be matched with all of the same resources and communication pathways that we would do to try and divert animals from coming into the shelter. So this allows these pre-adopters to also get clued into any resources you may have, behavior resources or medical resources, to help prevent this animal from returning to the shelter. And then when we were talking about communication, some things in particular to look at for alter appointments, if you're just sending out unaltered animals, have an easy way for the adopter to not just have an appointment when they go out and already know when that is set, but also how they could reschedule it on their own and you get an alert to it. For medical appointments, it's the same thing. How are you going to track your follow-up appointments? How are you going to get those scheduled with minimal invasiveness for the team? Here at PAC, we use a system called WaitWhile for all of our clinic appointments, including alters and follow-up treatment appointments. And that allows us to chat with adopters. It allows us to go and look at calendars, and will also allow them to reschedule on their own and have automated appointment reminders and automated ways to tell us they're running late for an appointment through that text function. And then team communication. It's important just to really look at your silos and kind of identify who is going to be the point person for communicating across departments. When concerns arise, you really need to be able to address them quickly and efficiently so that you don't have a reduced customer service for these pre-adopters. And so that is something that you really want to hash out in advance. And then tracking. Data is key for going and proving that these programs are going to be beneficial to your organization, or if you're having some slip-ups where there may need to be something you consider before moving forward. So for us on the tracking backend, we have a mandated service that we must have all of our pets altered before adoption. So if we have an animal go out and they miss their alter appointment, we need to be following up same day in order to meet our community mandate. So we have pretty robust SOPs that go over what to do exactly when we have something come up like a missed alter appointment or somebody who can't make it for a treatment at an offsite vet. So we have a particular SOP that we've developed over the years. So it's good to go and analyze concerns as they come up and then build them into your SOPs. And then some sort of automated system to give you a heads up when a pet may not have followed through on what your expectations for the program are. This could be everything from a Google Sheet where you plug in a date and it highlights it if after 2 weeks it's not updated, to some more automated systems through like a Chameleon. We use postmasters, and basically if a pet hasn't had their alter status swapped within a time period after they have been outcomed to a pre-adopt, we get kind of an emailed list out so that we can follow up with those particular people. And then we already talked about kind of defining job roles and making sure that you have a communication pathway for departments. So the other thing is reach out. There are a lot of people doing a lot of great work all across the country. Here are some of our documents that you guys can feel free to steal, and then feel free to reach out to me via email if there's any additional questions that come up.
Thank you so much, Katie. We will have some time for some questions. The first one, how do you ensure that adopters come back for the services the animals still need?
Katie, I think you did a great job of touching on some of that in your presentation, and I did see that pop up as you were answering it. So I'm not sure if you want to reiterate that, but you addressed that question for me too. Your services are a little different than ours, so if you want to tackle that first.
Yeah, for sure. So we have dealt with a lot of this over the years. So we have a couple different things that kind of come into play. The first one is that when we're sending out our initial paperwork, we have lots of language in there that talks about, especially for like a trial adoption, finalizing within a certain time frame, or for a pre-adoption, a no contact time frame, where if we don't hear from you in 90 days, we've attempted 3 rounds of contact, including a mail letter that we have worked with our government organization to allow for a no contact adoption that basically goes and says, hey, you've already signed the adoption paperwork. We are now adopting this animal to you, and we basically send all the finalization information as if it was a normal adoption, and then go from there. And then if we have things where people just aren't following up with appointments, we handle it similar to most other fosters. We try to have a conversation about why things aren't going on. We try to match them with resources. Our goal is to really keep this animal in the loving home. So if there's something we can do to match them with another foster who may be able to take them supplies, or another foster who could transport for an appointment. We also have telehealth that we could use for some of our minor issues. So we try to go and be as open as possible to working with these pre-adopters to keep these animals in their homes and out of the shelter.
Awesome. Thank you. We had another question, and it's about data, so I'm gonna just pop a couple of links in the chat. Augusta was asking, I love that the different kinds of programs to get pets out of shelters are part of this Zoom. Is there any data to show whether one system is better than another to get pets adopted, and why? And so I put links to 2 studies in the chat. One is they did a foster to adopt study, or a study during the pandemic, and it was foster to adopt. I think they found about 3/4 of the pets who went to foster to adopt were adopted by that family. Overnights and field trips are also just super, super helpful. If dogs who go on a field trip are 5 times more likely to be adopted, and dogs who go on an overnight are 14 times more likely to be adopted. So really, I mean, I think both these programs are fabulous. I think if you if you want to start with one, maybe field trips and overnights, because people who want to foster to adopt might be able to join that program. Whereas if you do foster to adopt, some of the people who would adopt may not be comfortable participating, if that makes any sense. Your thoughts?
I did want to touch on sleepovers. So I didn't touch on that with our field trips, but sleepovers are tied to our field trips program. So they get information when they go out with the field trip that if it's going so well and they want to be able to bring that home for the night, they can easily convert to a sleepover. They just have to notify our staff, and we typically have them come back to the shelter very quickly so we can get food to them for their night out. But we do really encourage them to bring the pets home if they are able to and if they want to. And we do see a pretty high rate of that for people that are staying in pet-friendly hotels or an Airbnb or have pet-friendly housing. So it's an easy lift.
And if I had to pick a favorite foster program, it definitely is day trips and pajama parties, just because it's such an easy way for people to engage with the shelter system overall. We're seeing an overall decrease in, adopters and people willing to adopt or shop online. We have a really big college community here in Tucson, and we are really in with these college kids, and it is some of their favorite thing to take out these dogs for day trips and pajama parties. They're missing their pets at home. Fraternities and sororities actually wind up being really great fosters for pets that may need to be the only pet in a home. But it also is going and showing all the great work that shelters do. It's getting these shelter pets out into the community to meet people and say, oh, we have incredible pets at shelters. You don't need to, go to a breeder or purchase online to know what you're getting. So I personally love it. I take out day trips all the time when we're going out to dinner or to lunch. And I just love engaging with people in the community and being like, oh yeah, this is a pack pet. And they're like, oh man, I heard they're all pit bulls, or I've heard X, Y, and Z. And it really helps us dispel those myths on top of kind of being a low barrier way to engage with foster program.
Katie, I just want to jump in and say one of the greatest weeks of my life was when I took a Pat Pack out to my hotel for the week. And he was a very big pit bull, but he was the sweetest. And I want to jump in with you too. I do field trips for my own organization as well. So I have 5 dogs at home. There's a dog who's walking around my office right now that you might hear her, and she was our last adoption. She is not very integrated with my other dogs. She doesn't love other dogs, but she loves me. And so she got adopted, but she took up our foster room. So it stopped us from fostering traditionally. So now I've converted to being a day foster for my own organization because it allows me to feel connected too. And same thing, we get a lot of like, oh, I can't believe this is a shelter dog, but it's so nice. It's a nice dog. And then I get to have that dialogue around, yeah, there's a lot of really great dogs in your community that are available for adoption.
We have a lot of questions that were answered in the Q&A. Thank you both. That was wonderful. We have a question from the chat. Does anyone approach apartments, condos, or assisted living facilities with day trip information?
Yeah, we have our flyer that I think I did include that has the QR code for signing up. We have those out in hotels with the concierge. We have them posted at the college campuses. We have them in apartment complexes. So wherever we can imagine that there is a target group, we will get those out in the community.
Yeah, and I'll chime in as well. In addition to our college, we also have a big military base. That's another great group of people who may not be able to take a pet permanently, but definitely love coming out and exploring. And, you know, Lauren's in a big tourist area. We have a big tourist season. We actually go and we coordinate with some of our larger events. We have a gem show that brings in people all over the world. And so we really try to also reach out to some of these big events where we know there's going to be a lot of new people coming in to try and promote some of these programs that people can just walk in and head out with a pet within, 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Awesome. I don't see any open questions. I'm going to give you all a chance to put in your last minute questions. And I'm going to ask Katie, you all did an incentivized foster promotion a couple of weeks ago. And I was wondering if you could just kind of briefly tell us about it and how it went, because it was very exciting. The results were really cool.
Yeah, so on top of having kind of a rather difficult year, we also were part of kind of our 3-year plan to install soundproofing materials in our largest kennel space, which was going to require us to kind of have about half that kennels unavailable and a really loud, noisy environment for the rest of the dogs there. So we had an incredible community response. Like I said, one of PAC's big tenets is going and being really transparent with the community, but also identifying what we're going to need. So we needed about half those kennels of our main kennel area cleared out so that we could go and provide better enrichment and a quieter space for the dogs left in that environment. So we put it out to the community and we found not just that we were able to meet that metric, but we took a lot of data this time. Our gut feel was every time we send out things in these big foster pushes, we don't get as many dogs back as we sent out. And in this recent push, I'll have to look up the numbers and I can send over our little synopsis we did for our Friends of PAC group because they offered an incentive for people taking foster pets for any length of time during the construction. Even a pajama party for 2 or 3 days is going to help with that kennel space and give that dog left in the kennels a better environment. So it was very open. It was something that everybody could engage with. And then we did offer an incentive to get more of the media traction. We found that the majority of the people actually didn't even take the incentive. They just wanted to help the dog. So that helped our back end. But we also found that a surprising percentage, I think it was around 50% of the dogs, we wanted them out for a 2-week period. Around 50% of the dogs didn't come back after that 2-week period, and only a month after, 15% of the dogs we had initially sent out were back in the shelter. So we had an incredible community response. I will say we were like, okay, that worked, and we'll do it for the next round of construction that wound up having to happen and a 4th of July push. We're still looking at that data, but we have found if you try and do it back to back, it is not quite as successful. But we also found that these kind of, again, incentive things, it gets into the media, it gets to new people. It also brought in a lot of people who were interested in adopting, but weren't quite sure. And again, these are kind of those low barrier. If you say yes as much as you can to sending out pets, whether it's for a 2-week foster or, you know, a trial adoption, something like that, it gives people who may be hesitant to say and commit to adoption because they feel like it's forever, a better way to feel like they can try things out in their home. And we had around 20% of our fosters that went out in this incentive actually adopted by their fosters. And I can't remember the percentage right off the top of my head, but it was over 100 individuals who were new fosters to our program and hadn't ever come and taken a dog before. So it was a really great way to engage a new aspect of our community, whether they were interested in adopting or fostering. It got the animals out of the shelter, and we only got about 15% back after that month period.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, Lauren and Katie. And thanks to all of you watching today's webcast. If you have questions later, post them on Maddie's Pet Forum, and we will be on there taking a look to answer some. Here are some links to today's slides and handouts. All right. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.